I posted in Barb's Bags Got Interfacing because I love her woven fuse, and I used it on all my leather pieces, my lining pieces, my mini to one. This is all, the Lisa bag is from SerialBagmakers. And I bought the bundle where I got the Lisa pattern and I got the mini to one. The mini to one is just a wallet organizer type thing. It's got 10 credit card slots, 2 nice pockets to put anything you want, money, receipts. It's got a coin pocket and 2 slip pockets. Also, you can unsnap it and take either piece you want in a different purse, or I put cam snaps inside my bag so that I can snap this right in my bag and it holds in and looks nice. It was a fun and easy make. But Barb asked me, will you do a little tutorial on the weaving? I've never done a video tutorial before, so we'll see how this goes. Please have patience because I haven't done it before. But we're going to be weaving these slots in. Some of the things that you're going to need. You're going to need the Lisa pattern, or you can adapt this to any pattern that you want. I'm going to upload the template for cutting your slots to weave. You'll need that. And then you'll need Barb's interfacing to secure all your weaving stitches or strips when you're done. I have just a little bit of my Barb's Got interfacing left. I'm gonna have to order before long. I keep every scrap when I get done because I use all the bits and pieces. I'll put them together like a puzzle. You also will need a mat to make your slits, to cut your slits. This is called a cold chisel, and I got it at my local farm store, and you'll need a hammer for that. A little bit of painter's tape. As you can see, I already have a piece of leather down here. I'm going to be cutting my strips first thing. So I tape everything down with painter's tape because it comes off good. You'll need a cutting mat, you'll need your ruler, and you'll need your rotary cutter. So first thing, what I usually do is try to find scraps that are big enough to make the leather project that I want to do. I've only bought one hide before and I still am too scared to use it. I usually buy scraps from Hobby Lobby or Joann Fabrics. They always have a 40 or 50% off coupon, and I buy bags of scraps, and lots of times you get nice big pieces, big enough for this bag, or I've done other bags, but there's no huge pieces. So you kind of have to pick and choose, but Hobby Lobby and Joann Fabrics is where I get my leather. To make my strips, I tape down a piece of leather that's at least the length of my longest weaving strip, which I know that's about 9 inches, so I have this nice big piece here. I'm just going to use it. And I cut, line up, and I cut my edge off nicely just like you would fabric. And then for this project, I'm using 1/2-inch strips. So I've already pre-cut and I have a whole bunch of 1/2-inch strips ready for weaving, but I wanted to show you how I do it, and I just keep moving over and cut all my strips. Okay, next thing we're going to do is we're going to cut the slits for our weaving process. So I don't want to ruin my decent cutting mat, so I have just a little cutting mat that I slide under. We're going to tape everything down good so it doesn't move on us when we're cutting our slits. So I have my front panel for my Lisa. I don't do the back anymore. I used to do the back when I did them, but I like my front to be different because then I always know where my credit card slots are, because I always put my credit cards at the front of my purse. So I'm gonna line this up on my pattern piece, and I'm gonna use painter's tape and tape this template down. I'll show you a picture here when I put the video together of my cutting template. You're going to be cutting slits. There are red and green dots, and you're going to be cutting your slits on those red and green dots so that you can weave your work later. Now, the video is probably going to bounce around because I'm going to be cutting the slits. When you look at the template, there are cutting slits above and below each one of the black squares. So you would put your chisel, center it right above the black square, tap it a couple times, sorry this is going to bounce, and it cuts through your template and your leather. Make sure that you hit it hard enough that it does go through your leather. And you just continue that all the way down. So every one of the dotted lines, you are going to use your chisel and make all the slits. The way that I pick my chisel size is the black squares are around 3/4 of an inch. This chisel is a 5/8 inch chisel. So I want my slit to weave just a little narrower than the black box so that I have a little bit of room between each row. So that's how I picked for this project. Okay, I've gone through and used my chisel and done every one of these. I might suggest before you try doing it on the template is get a scrap piece of leather and see how many times you have to tap to get through the leather. That's the hardest part, and if you don't have your slit all the way through, then you have to use an X-Acto knife and cut it. It's a lot easier to use a cold chisel. The first time I did it, I used the X-Acto knife, which was more of a pain. This is really easy, and these are super cheap at Lowe's, Home Depot, but I think this one came from my farm store. So we're gonna see if I got my slits deep enough. I usually use my templates a couple times and then I print out a new one. It's just easier. The more slits you have in it, the harder it is to get a good edge. So just use them a couple, 3 times, whatever you feel works for you. So you get little pieces of paper down in the slits. Super easy to do this. I'll leave the paper in there and I'm going to come around so I can see what I'm showing you. If you look at this, now you have a slit pattern. Let me see if it will focus. Now you have a slit pattern and you can see each one of your slits. Notice that they are offset just by a little bit. That's what each one of the checkerboards are for on my template, because you have to have a little space between each one so that the leather doesn't rip. Okay, we are almost done. So I have all my slits here, or all my strips here. What I try to do is I try to angle one of the pieces. It makes it a little easier to weave. And I usually start with one of my longer strips. Every one of your rows, you're always going to start out from the bottom side. So I'm going to start, I think it's the 3rd one in, put my little point through, pull that through until you have a tail that just keeps out of your seam allowance, because if you have the tails, you can always cut them off later, but if you have the tails in your seam allowance, it makes it harder for a domestic sewing machine to do it, to sew through it. So, and then you go down in the next slit, up, down. It's just kind of a unique touch that really doesn't take much time. You could also do this with fabric and interface the fabric first and then put, what's it called? Fray check on each one of your slits before you did it. Let that dry thoroughly and then make like bias tape strips and weave them through. It looks pretty cute too. I made a couple that way. I also do this in vinyl. I made my mom a little crossbody type purse to carry that she loves. She's been carrying it 2 years now. I got the vinyl. It was marine vinyl at Joann Fabrics. Still looks like brand new and she carries it every day. And the weaving has lasted really nice. So now I have my first row of weaving in. I'm gonna grab another longer strip because I'm still doing a longer one. Start out with my angled edge. This piece of leather just had a lot of nice angles already to it, but if it doesn't, then I just cut an angle before I get started. So pull it through just a little more. We need enough left at the first and the end so we can glue or rubber cement our ends so that they won't come undone later. And I won't bore you with, if you didn't get your little slit quite through enough, it's a little hard. I may have to go in there with my scissors or my X-Acto knife and fix that one. Nope, I got it. So, you just keep weaving. I'll be back in a minute. Okay, after recording my original video, Sheila asked me if I could do an up close of the weaving process. That might help some people. So I pulled out a couple of my strips and I'm gonna try to weave around the camera. But I pulled out my end 2 strips and I'm gonna start the weaving process. So we always start under. I've got a little point on my end. There we go. Through. Down the next slit. Up. And down. This is hard doing it with the camera in front of me, but now you can kind of see the weaving process. Grab my last one, go up from the bottom with my point. These are really bad pieces of leather. I didn't want to use any of my good leather, so I used some of the bad edges so they don't look real good. But so that is the weaving process and what it looks like, so you can really see it up close. Hope that helps, Sheila. I'll pull those 2 strips out and put my brown back in, and we'll get right on with the rest of the video. Okay, so I'm finishing up my last weaving strip and putting that in. And I've got all my weaving process done. You're gonna have to run something over it to get the lint off of it, but all my strips are in here. They lay nicely. 2 things you can do to hold your strips down. Liquid stitch, original, get it at Walmart, Joann Fabrics, wherever. I use that sometimes. If it's not cold outside, I usually use contact cement because it's got a really strong odor. So today it's very cold out here, so I'm not going to use a contact cement, but if I did, I would just dip in a little bit and put it on. This can, I think, cost me $6 at Lowe's. They have contact cement with little brushes, but it's more expensive. So I just got this can, and they also didn't have anything but this in my small town that I live in the day that I wanted it, and I didn't want to wait. So I've got a big can of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use fabric liquid stitch today, and I would put a little dot Don't get it too close to this edge here or it will ooze back to the front side. You don't want that. So push out when you're doing it. Don't get it real far down your strip because you're going to cut those off after it's dry. So put one dot on each one, go all the way around, glue it down. let it dry. Then when you're done, and it's all dry, make sure you let it dry good. Then clip off your ends nice and neat so they're not in the seam allowance. This one is down at the seam allowance, so I definitely don't want that there. This pattern goes together so nicely, but you have to make sure and do the correct seam allowance. Once you're done gluing them down and it's dry, you're ready for your very last step. And I've already got my interfacing cut for this. It's just the woven interfacing that Barb sells. And the nice thing that I like about this interfacing is when I spray it with water to steam it on, it shrinks just enough that it's not in my seam allowance. Sorry there. It's not in my seam allowance, so it's just perfect. I love it. It's got a nice feel to it, but this will keep all your little ends from coming up. So I put it on, I put it in my press, and I press it down for about 15 seconds on probably cotton. And I do it with my leather facing down, my interfacing on top. Sometimes I put a cloth over it, sometimes I don't. But spritz it with water, steam it for 15 to 20 seconds to set your interfacing. You are done and you are ready to go on and do the rest of your pattern or your bag.